Alright guys, this video is going to go through getting started with our new controller setup. So as you know, we have our 3 potentiometers and 2 push buttons that we need to include, along with our little control board, which looks a little bit like this one. So what this allows us to do is simplify our wiring. So we have our power switch up here, and then a series of cables over here. They're going to go through to our Arduino on the robot arm, and then down here we have our 3 potentiometers and our 2 buttons connected through here. So the wiring will be a little bit more straightforward for you guys. I've done all the heavy work setting these up. So what we're going to need to do is to be able to include this element in our design. So you can see I've given you 4 holes to be able to attach it to our controller. Now the dimensions we can see is 60.960, so we're going to round that to 61. This one here is 27.94, which we're going to round to 28. So we're going to need somewhere probably at the top so that these wires can come out up the top here, and some space underneath here to let the wires come out underneath there for the end as well. So we're going to set that up on our an example board for you guys now. So if we come onto here, I'm going to work on the top view here. So I'm going to hit N to go normal to that one, and then I'm going to add a new sketch. So bringing that one, I'm going to choose the top plane for that one. So you can see now my sketch one is there. From here, I'm going to start by creating a rectangle. Now, I want to connect it to the origin as much as I can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go a center point rectangle. So even if you're doing something rounded, I would suggest that this is a really nice starting point for it. So I'm going to say my controller wants to be about 160 millimeters wide, and I'm going to go 100 high. Now this is probably a little bit on the large side, but that's okay. It gives me a good starting point to show you how we work with this. So if that's going to be my controller, now we can do more to it later, but I want to set up where my control board needs to go. So I'm going to have it set up at the top here. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to make a corner rectangle this time. I'm going to go a little bit underneath here, because what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to make it a construction. So shortcut is Q. So you can see I've got the corner rectangle and construction selected. I'm going to make a rectangle here. If you remember what we said, it was 61 and it was 28, and I'm just going to check that before I go any further. So we can see 61, 28, cool, I got that right. So what these are going to be are where our circles to be able to cut out are. So I'm going to zoom in up here. I'm going to now draw circles on those corners. So I'm going to go here. Now I'm going to make that 2.65, which allows us to thread an M3 bolt into it. So he's there. I'm going to go 1 on each corner, but the other 3 I'm not going to dimension, because what I'm going to use is this equals. So I'm going to go from that one to there, now he's sized. This one to there, now he's sized, and that one to there, now he's sized. So now I've got that going. I want to be able to get that centered so I'm nice and balanced. So what I'm going to use here is my symmetric. So what this does is we select 2 things. I'm going to choose that line and that line, and I want it to be symmetric around here. So now it's balanced. Notice that those 2 lines have turned black. I can move those around wherever I want, but I can't move it across now. So from there, what I can do is I can set how much space I want at the top. So I'm going to do my shortcut for D, which is my dimension up here, and I'm going to go from that circle to the top here, and I'm just going to make that 5, so there's a little bit of space there. Alright, so now where my holes are going to be cut out is perfect. So if I now go extrude and make that my 3mm for my MDF piece, there's my piece. But at the moment I've got a problem, because I need to have a cutout in this piece to be able to fit that controller board. So I'm going to go back into my sketch now. So I've done the extrude, that's okay. I'm going to double click to go back in the sketch, and I want to add a cutout through here. Now if we have a look, it's fairly close to that diode there. So I don't have much space on the inside there. Maybe a couple mils at best. This side, this is quite close as well. So let's go in, and I'm going to add a rectangle on the inside going a little bit further down here. So I'm going to grab my corner rectangle again. I'm going to see by highlighting it and covering there, you can see it's got orange. It's saying I'm putting a coincident on that. So this little guy here, which means my rectangle is going to be locked to that top. So I'm going to bring it over somewhere, it's going to be somewhere about there. So if I have a look, it's telling me 55, so I'm just going to round that to 55 and see how we go with that. And then over here I can see it's 46. I don't need that long, so I'm going to see how 40 looks. So that's probably okay. What I can do now, I hit escape to deselect, and I've got those sitting over here. So I want to be able to do that center with this again. So what I'll do is I'm going to go my symmetric, that line, with that line and the middle line. And now what I might need to do is I'm going to actually increase that and see how 56 looks. Maybe 57. So this is something we might need to check when we actually print it out. So I think that might be a little bit better. And I've got then some space for the wires to go underneath. And then I've got my space through here. So now if I finish that sketch, it hasn't updated through here. I can then go in and select that part to remove him, or the other option is I can remove this piece up here so it's sort of a cutout. So if I go and get my trim, I can cut those pieces, and because I measured from the lines, not the points, everything's still happy there. So now when I go tick, it's already done that. So I can tidy that up a little bit further. Obviously you're not going to go as boring as this design, but now I have space for that controller to be fixed on and the wires to be able to go through. What I would probably do now is just round some of those corners. So these two, I'm going to select on that one, and that one are now at 2mm radius. And do I like the look of that? I might be able to increase that a little bit more. So let's go up to 4. I'm happy with that. Now I'm going to do that again, but I might go a little bit larger on these inside ones. I'm going to select that line and that line, and I'm going to go my fillet again. So now that's rounded. I'm going to go up to maybe 6, and I'm going to go tick. So now that part of my design is all ready to go for the controller to fit in nicely at the top. I can then change the shape, and whatever I need to do to the rest of this, I might be able to reduce this down. So if I reduce that down, so actually I only want it to be, let's say 65, it's all going to then compress in. But because I've got everything other than that, it looks like, because I've measured from up here, let's get back over here, put that dimension back in. I'm going to go a 38. I think I had 40 last time, but that should be fine. So now I can change and adjust as I go through. Now if I wanted to add curves or a circle, I could start building that out as well. So if I then move that and go, all right, well I want my shape to be on this side. I can make that tangent on that side as well. So then I've got my curved shape on that side. Make that tangent on this edge. And then he's locked in. I can then trim out the bits that I don't want, which are those extra bits through here. And that's now there. Now he's lost his tangent, but I can always add that back in and start playing a little bit with that as well. I've lost the tangent on that edge. Interesting. Now that's locked in. But then I can keep going through and building the shape and adding in the pieces that I want. Remember, if you wanted to have your slot for a lever, I'm just making that value up. But you'll want to think about also including then on the side of that the little circle for the bolt to go through, and then the two bits on either side to be able to include your perpendicular piece with the potentiometer on. So I'd be able to set that up. Ideally, I wouldn't measure that out. I would use a mirror once I have everything set up. But we've got another tutorial that goes through that. We just want to make sure we don't forget about those bits and setting those up as well. All right, good luck for your next step on creating our controllers.